Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast is presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Tom Curran's Patriots Talk podcast featuring Phil Perry. Ladies and gentlemen, as we look to the fast approaching 2023 draft, I'm going to ask everyone to look ahead to 2024. Yeah, in March of next year is a significant number of expiring contracts. And Phil, I think that will help give us guidance as to what the Patriots are going to do in a couple of weeks.
I think that's fair, Tom. I mean, this is something that they've done in the past, right? Where they almost take a player that they don't even need right away because the roster, we've heard many people say it over the years, whether it's Bill Belichick or Nick Caserio, say, we feel pretty good about our ability to go play a game right now if we had to before the draft. And that frees them up to go and take whatever player they deem to be the best fit across positions. I would put it to you, though. Do you think they are pretty well set up to play a game right now? Or is there a position that is glaring to you and so glaring that they might need to use one of their first picks on it? Because that's what they've sort of done most recently. I would say the last 5 or 6 years, it feels like. And really for the most of Bill Belichick's career with the Patriots, their first round pick has filled a need and has played right away.
I do think that they could take the field with a straight face and feel they had an opportunity to win the football game. Caveat, the coaching is what we expect it to be. And I think they could do that against any team in the NFL. I really do. I think that they're going to have enough talent on offense, and they've already produced enough on defense to see that they're a competitive team. Now, there's a disconnect. We had a long conversation on Monday on Early Edition as to where the Patriots fit in the AFC. I think that they've made really pretty giant gains this offseason in their coaching, in their organization. The biggest problem was offensive coaching, followed quickly by situational stupidity and discipline. All of those things are either fixed or on their way. They've upgraded the tight end position. They've fixed, to my belief, at least with a little bit more than duct tape, the right tackle position. It ain't fixed totally. But to me, you can take the field. So when we look at 14 and we look at expiring contracts, the biggest expiring contracts right now, Phil, are kind of not positions of extreme need. Like I look at corner, wide receiver, and tackle as being their main areas, and none of those spots really have expiring contracts except for Trent Brown. Wide receiver does with Bourne and Devontae Parker. Let me just roll through those expiring contracts for the hell of it. These are the major guys. Defensively, it's Duggar, Uche, and Bentley, all expire in 2024. So you could look at safety, but do you want an apprentice safety for a year? You could look at edge, understanding Uche could go someplace else and Judon's up after in 2025. Or do you want Bentley? Not as big a deal. Then you have guard Mike Onwenu, one of the NFL's best, point blank. Trent Brown, tackle, that's a spot you can hit. Then you have tight end with Hunter Henry and Gesicki, and then Bourne and Parker. You can get an apprentice at any of those spots. That's why I keep looking at 14 and say the Patriots are in an unbelievably good spot. Say they take an edge guy, and everyone's like, what the hell do they do that for? Well, because Uche's up after this year. And he might command $14-15 million a year. And then the next year, Judon's up. But why'd they take a tackle? Well, I mean, all the others are self-explanatory, but look at those spots, Phil, and tell me what the logic should be if the Patriots are facing the opportunity to draft or trade down.
You know what's really interesting as you're talking here? I'm just looking at overthecap.com. And if you look at where the Patriots are situated for 2024, so after this coming season, with all these expiring contracts that you're talking about, they have to be near the top of the list in terms of the fewest veteran contracts on the team, period, for 2024. So like everybody's expiring. Like they don't have many players. Like if you look at it right now, because I'm looking, they are slated to be second in cap space for the 2024 off season, which is we're not accustomed to them being that high up. And if you actually look at the list of players that are under contract for 2024 right now, again, in terms of veteran contracts, like your Cole Stranges and your Kevin Harris's, and those guys are around. But the veteran guys that are on the roster for 2024, it looks like Matt Judon, Devon Godchaux, Dietrich Wise, David Andrews, John Jones, Juju Smith, Adrian Phillips, Lawrence Guy, Jabril Peppers. There's a couple more that are like, it's not a huge list. Like they've got, in terms of like true 53-man roster players, Calvin Anderson will be on the team, Jelani Tavai probably. Like they've got like 13 guys on the roster right now for 2024
who are on their second contracts
that are veterans, right? That are not on rookie deals. Yes.
Yeah. So we can still talk about Tyquan Thornton and Mac Jones and,
of course,
and all those guys and Cole Strange, as Phil mentioned. All those guys are on their rookie deals. What this trends toward, Phil, is this very old team with McCourty and Slater and Brady and Edelman and so many guys just a couple of years ago. This is a youth infusion in many ways. So you look at 14 and they're going to need these spots, but it's fascinating to me to look at this spot. Which guy would you prioritize from the people I mentioned? Because obviously if you're going to have all that cap space in 2024 and you only have those guys under contract, well, hell, you can go get Duggar and Onwenu and put them under contract. You might even want to jump to it now. You can go ahead and look at Juwan Bentley and say, buddy, I know that you're not going to make a shit ton somewhere out in the great environs of the NFL, but we like you here. We're going to re-up you now. Those are three. Uche too. He might be a guy who could, see some serious interest on the open market, kind of like in a Jacoby Myers sense. But I think that Uche would get more than Myers did because he does have a rare skill. Well, which guy would you prioritize, Phil, among those?
From that group, I would probably prioritize Uche. And I say that because I just look at the players for sure, but you look at the positions that they play as well. And you try to find, okay, which one's the hardest to fill? Guard, as good as Micah Wenu has been, guard, generally speaking, is one of the easier positions in the league, across the league, to find a starting caliber player. Mm-hmm. Linebacker is, I think depends on maybe who you talk to, but because there are so few true off the ball linebackers that play, all three downs in today's game, I don't know how difficult is it to find that position. That's generally speaking, the off the ball linebacker is not one of the highest paid positions in the sport, whereas edge defender is.
But Bentley's a culture setter.
He is. Yep.
And that's why, if you can get him for $6 or $7 million a year, and people are going to go, why are you giving Juwan Bentley a $30 million 4-year contract? Well, because he's a culture setter and you need that.
You do. You also need sacks. I would say so. Uche would be the guy for me.
Oh, I'm not saying instead of. I'm just saying.
But in terms of priority, right? Yeah. And who you might be willing to give the most average annual value to. I think the nice thing about Uche is, it's nice for them financially. It hasn't been great for them on the field. He doesn't have a huge resume of huge production, right? So you're betting on his improvement moving forward. You probably wouldn't have to give him anything close to a top of the market deal. But if you give him a deal that pays him 10 or 12 a year and he ends up being a 10 or 12 sack a year guy for you, that's really good value. So that would be why I would prioritize him.
Then Onwenu or then Duggar?
So I probably would go Duggar after that. Because again, the guard spot to me is almost like the running back conversation that we've had of late. Why would you invest huge money or a really high draft pick in a position where, generally speaking, you can find those guys a little bit later? So that would be my logic with Duggar versus Onwenu.
Okay. So again, here's our takeaway from this early portion of the program. Patriots have a number of key expiring contracts in 2024, which will inform their draft decisions in 2023. But additionally, there's guys who they can re-sign because they have a massive amount of cap space next year they could actually start to apply that cap space this year by keeping guys on similar contracts and then starting to throw it forward. Just to give you an idea, Phil, I did a story yesterday and looked at some of the top of the market numbers and what guys would be able to command. Start with Duggar. And this is just to give you an idea. The Falcons signed Jesse Bates from Cincinnati. He got a 4-year, $64 million deal. That would be a comp for Duggar, in my estimation. 4 and 64. I think there was, let me see how much guaranteed. Yeah, we didn't put it down here. Good job, Tom. But that's not bananas. Next up, Uche. Okay, there's 7 pass rushers out there making 20 million or more annually. Those are the elites. Von Miller's, you name them. You know them off the top of your head. He does not have a case to join them. Even if he lights it up this year, does not have a case for that. There are 12 who make between $10 million and $15 million annually. And if Uche has another season that follows up the 11.5 sack season of 2022, that's not unreasonable. And remember, Judon expiring in 2024. Finally, and this is arguing against the likelihood of Mike Onwenu re-signing before free agency. Chris Lindstrom, I'm telling you, my doctor will not stop with the full court press to get me in there and turn my head and cough. And I like the guy. Chris Lindstrom, 5-year deal, averaging $20 million. So $100 million deal for Chris Lindstrom with the Atlanta Falcons. They re-signed him $20 million a year, 62.7 guaranteed. Now, Lindstrom was a first-round pick, and Onwenu was a 6th. But by now, it has been established by me, and that's the only thing that matters, is that the league missed on Onwenu. So who cares what round he was drafted in, which I think the Patriots often use as a hammer against some of their clients. But he's one of the best offensive guards in the league, period, end of story. Those numbers make me say,
yeah, I mean, the Lindstrom deal, really, they blew it out of the water, and just in terms of you're looking at right guards.
Too. That's a right guard, I know.
For right guards, fully guaranteed money, he's getting, according to Over the Cap, over $48 million fully guaranteed, which doesn't, it almost dwarfs Zach Martin, who's for a long time been one of the best right guards in football, who on his latest deal got 32.
Chris Lindstrom got the Deshaun Watson deal of guards.
It's unbelievable. So again, position that is somewhat replaceable relative to others, where you might have to pay through the nose to make sure you keep the guy. I do think the 6th round thing will hold him back, Tom. I also think because of his style of play, now we might be getting too into the nitty gritty in terms of who he is as a player, but at 350 pounds, Mike Onwenu's not going to be an option for all of these teams that run wide zone. So if he gets to the free agent market and the Falcons need a guard opposite Chris Lindstrom, they're a wide zone team, or the Rams or the Niners or any of these teams that we talked about ad nauseum when the Patriots tried to make that move last year, he's not going to be for them. So his market might be suppressed a little bit because of that. And so maybe you'd be able to get him for a little bit cheaper.
We see the immediate needs for the Patriots right now in terms of cornerback because of the class of corner that's going to come out. Again, there's going to be some quarterbacks who push down the talent to 14. But the immediate needs that we all seem to be agreeing on: corner, offensive tackle,
receiver.
Thank you. Those are the main ones. Do we move safety, hybrid safety, or edge, or even guard into the mix with the possibility that these guys could be departing? Or do we stick with, okay, it's just those 3 that we've been talking about? Do we move those spots into the conversation for the Patriots to get better in 2.5 weeks?
Sure. And I think especially, when we're talking about, again, these premium positions, I would look at edge and say, it's nice that you have Judon and it's nice that you have Uche. Uche's missed a lot of time over the course of his career. You don't have a ton after those guys. You do have Dietrich Wise, who plays inside and out.
Yep.
You have Anthony Jennings, who was pretty good on early downs last year for the Patriots. but just not a lot of surefire pass rushers in that group right now. And that wouldn't surprise me if they ended up going with an edge rusher and saying, well, we're going to need 3 of these guys anyway. One of them's a free agent after the year, and he's hurt half the time. So we're getting better now. It looks like a pick for the future, but we're getting better now by adding say it's Lucas Van Ness from Iowa, played for Bill Belichick's buddy, Kirk Ferentz, for the Hawkeyes there. Or say it's Nolan Smith, who's this explosive, a little bit undersized. He's a little bit similar to Uche, in all honesty. He's closer to 230 than he is to 250 probably, which the Patriots, generally speaking, like on the edge, but he's really strong, really athletic, really explosive, from one of Bill Belichick's favorite college programs down there with the Bulldogs. So like that wouldn't stun me. That to me is not as pressing as a need like receiver or a bigger bodied corner, but it's up there.
Is tackle moving down in your list of needs? Just in terms of urgency?
So it is a little bit, and only because the people that I've spoken to a few coaching staffs over the course of the last couple of weeks, and they just don't love the tackle class. They don't love it. They don't think it's super deep, which it never is, right? Those guys are rare. But Peter Skoronski is almost universally thought of as the best lineman in this class, but he's got 32-inch arms, and his best position might be guard. Then you're talking about Paris Johnson, who's sort of the opposite end of the spectrum. He's got every physical tool you could want, 36-inch arms, Tom. Yes, he's like one of those inflatable dummies outside the car.
Sure.
The car lot. Do those guys have long arms? I don't even know. But he's a great athlete, just doesn't have a ton of experience playing tackle. Same for Broderick Jones at Georgia. Darnell Wright is a little bit limited maybe in terms of his athleticism, so he's probably a right tackle only guy. But those might be the only 4 that go in the first round. And again, they all have kind of their warts. So that's one thing. The other thing is for the Patriots specifically, and I would love to know how you feel about this. They have 3 guys that are making real money or set to make real money going into this year at that position. You only bring 3 to game day. Trent Brown, Riley Reiff, and Calvin Anderson all are set to make real money. Now, you could draft a guy in the first and say, Trent,
I know.
Thanks, but no thanks. We'll trade you, we'll release you, and we'll use this first round pick at right or left tackle. But that to me is why it moves down a little bit. Is it just looks like they have 3 guys that could be in uniform week 1 and they would be okay with it, especially given the money that they've given these guys. It looks like they're okay with it.
Yeah. Plus the bod is hanging around. Yod adjust. Yod the bod. But yeah, you're presuming right now that it is Trent Brown and either Riley Reiff or Calvin Anderson at the right tackle spot. With Connor McDermott, there is break glass in case of emergency, and he was fine for 6 games last year. Adjust actually was fine as well, right, Phil? Watching closer than I was.
He wasn't great, but again, they decided to tender him. That's not guaranteed money, but if he's around, that's another $2 million for the tackle spot. It looks like they've just thrown a lot at that position, and it would, based on all the veteran bodies that are part of the mix right now, it would almost surprise me a little bit, unless there was somebody that fell to them that they absolutely loved. It would surprise me a little bit if they took one at 14.
Okay. So all that said, we're going to look at now in our minds, edge, wide receiver, corner, and I have a close and fast on the outside tight end. Now, here's the reason I say tight end. The Patriots have 2 expiring contracts at that position with Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki. The Patriots habitually want 2 tight ends. Now, they fell asleep at the switch, in my estimation, during the latter years of Gronk. They tried with Scott Chandler. They brought in Martellus Bennett. And then they fell asleep at the switch for a couple of years with Ryan Izzo and Matt Lacoste and just believing that they'd be fine. Well, once Gronk surprised retired, the Patriots panic picked and took Asiasi and Keene both in the 3rd round. Both guys are long gone and hard to find and contributed nothing to the program. They went and they got Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith in an overspend, got nothing from Smith. They've now brought in Gesicki, but those guys are both expiring. And the Patriots like to have 2 tight ends. They've had it since 2002 with Graham and Watson, did it again in 2010 with Gronkowski and Hernandez. We've seen in the last few years. So they're going to want 2. Tight ends are out there, Phil. This is a bumper crop of tight ends. Could the Patriots, and we'll get into the names in just a second, dip in early and kill two birds with one stone in a pass catcher / blocker who can help that tackle position? So I'm injecting that into the mix here. You can kill two birds with one stone by bolstering your tight end group, adding a blocker on the end of the line to help your tackles, and finding a pass catcher for Mac Jones, who is not a wideout.
Well, it's a great class. I mean, it looks like the best tight end class that we've seen in about a decade. That's about as long as I've been covering the draft for NBC Sports Boston, and this is far and away the best. Then it probably would go back even further than that in terms of the depth and I think the top end talent at the position. There's no Kyle Pitts. It's going to be like a top 5 pick in this year's class, Tom, but you could see a couple go in the first round, 2 or 3. I think you could see 3 or 4 go in the second. You know, it's that good. So if you have a need, there's also sort of all shapes and sizes, all different types of flavors for you at that position in this year's class too.
Especially at the top of the group. You know, you got Dalton Kincaid from Utah, 6'4", 246. He ran a 4.73. Generally regarded as the best one. But Michael Mayer from Notre Dame, you guys saw him during college football postseason. You saw him in the bowl games. He was a threat, downfield threat. And then the fastest and most and he's 6'5", 249, runs a 4.7. The fastest and most athletic guy is Sam Laporta from Iowa, played for Kirk Ferentz. He's 6'3", 245. He's projected as a first or second round pick. And then you have the gargantuan hybrid tackle tight end, Darnell Washington out of Georgia. Low production because of the tight end group that was at Georgia. But he's 6'7", 264, 34-inch arms, 11-inch hands, ran a 4.64.
It's crazy.
You can have productive, you can have sleek, you can have small and fast, you can have giant. Now, Washington would not be the 14th overall pick. Laporta, probably not either. Kincaid could be an eye-widening pick at 14. Phil, they're gonna take 1 or 2 tight ends, guy. Oh, and there's 2 more. There's actually 3 more. Can I keep going?
Just keep going.
Musgrave, Oregon State. He's got a Gronk situation. He was hurt last year, but he's a red zone beast. Tucker Kraft, South Dakota State, just like that other kid from South Dakota State or North Dakota. Which one?
Dallas Goedert.
That's the guy.
Jackrabbit.
Okay, a factor now. Cole Kmet. Where'd he go? Notre Dame?
Yeah, he's a Notre Dame guy.
All right, Notre Dame guy. So he harkens back to your
Michael Mayer.
That's right. And here's the last guy, Phil. And watch it. They're definitely taking this kid. It's Luke Schoonmaker out of Michigan. Big old 6'5", 251. Ran a 4.63. Played in the Shrine Bowl. Had a good week. Bill had the eyes on him up close. Yeah, I like the way you play. So, to me, they're taking a couple. You got your Gronk. What if they go Musgrave, Schoonmaker?
So listen.
Sorry.
No, you're right. Like that's the kind of sort of collaborative package you could put together at this position in this year's draft if you really wanted to. And you say Darnell Washington, not at 14, but we just saw Bill Belichick take a guy who was widely mocked in the 3rd round at like 89 overall in the 1st round. And he went to UT Chattanooga. This guy goes to Georgia. That's Patriots AAA squad practically down there. So, and he's just so rare. You mentioned the 4.6 40, 4.08 short shuttle, Tom. That's a slot receiver time. You know, there's slot receivers in this year's draft.
He took wicked long steps and went back and forth.
Potentially, but listen, long steps, short steps, change of direction is change of direction, and we know the Patriots value that. At 6'7", 272, how often have we heard Bill Belichick talk about, usually it's an offensive or defensive lineman. Yeah, look, I mean, this guy's 350 pounds. I mean, he's got 35-inch arm. I mean, these guys don't grow on trees. Okay. Like Darnell Washington does not grow on trees type. He's the definition of that. Musgrave, you mentioned Laporta being the fastest. I think Musgrave might be the fastest. He's also, Tom, Luke Musgrave from Oregon State, an all-league high school lacrosse player. Okay.
What?
Ran over 20 miles an hour. He was clocked at going over 20 miles an hour at 2:55 at the Senior Bowl in Mobile. He was one of the 20 fastest players at the Senior Bowl. That includes receivers. That includes your guy, Tank Dell. It includes all the corners, all the running backs. He was a top 20 fastest player at that frame, which is ridiculous. And I think you get him at a little bit of a value because he only played, like you mentioned, he only played 2 games last year. If he played a full season and lit it up, he might be a first-round pick. So you could go, if you want Washington, say he's a second-round guy, and he's your true Y inline tight end. Now you want a move guy. You could, Kincaid probably off the board at that point in time. Kraft isn't exactly a move guy, Tucker Kraft from South Dakota, but you could maybe go and look at somebody like Brenton Strange from Penn State, who's still pretty big, but moves pretty well, ran a 4.7 40, jumped 36 inches in the vertical, has sort of that aggressive demeanor, but is a good yak option as a receiver. Like you could do that kind of thing. You could get 2 guys and feel really good about it.
Phil just got rolling downhill. Can you see these?
You didn't like Brent? You know what? Brenton Strange, it could grab a Strange for the 2nd year in a row.
Oh, they've gone so strange. Stranger things. Listen, they will look so imposing walking through the airport. The receiver group. Juju Smith-Schuster is huge. That's the one thing that has been standing out to me when I watch all the highlights of him. So you get Juju, Devontae Parker, Darnell Washington, Luke Musgrave. Their friggin' receivers are bigger than their offensive linemen. I mean, that would be zigging a little bit.
I guess the question would be, if you expend a high-end pick at that position.
Oh, Pop Gun. No, wait. Just Pop Gun Mac has a bunch of guys who can box out and wait for his passes to get there.
Okay, so you're making a joke. I do think that by attacking the middle of the field, which is what you would be doing with these 2 tight ends, they already have 2 tight ends on the roster. Hunter Henry, to me, is more of a short to intermediate middle of the field option, whereas Gesicki is really, and this is where I think his value is going to be for them, he's really a vertical middle of the field option because of that athleticism that he has. Juju Smith-Schuster, we know, is a middle of the field guy working the slot. Maybe they end up with, Jackson Smith and Jigba would probably have to be their first-round pick, but maybe they end up with another middle of the field, whether it's tight end or receiver option in the draft. That's where Mac Jones is probably going to be at his best, Tom, because of some of his limitations. He's not going to be pushing the 18-yard out from the opposite hash through the wind at Gillette Stadium all that often.
Because it adds, literally, folks, geometrically, it adds 20 yards to the throw. It adds 60 feet at least.
This is going to be a get it out of your hands, quick moving, attack with a million paper cuts kind of offense, it looks like. And that probably is catering your offense to your quarterback. So I do think if they go with the tight ends, that would be trying to elevate what it is that Mac Jones brings to you.
They still need somebody with shimmy, though. And Tyquan Thornton has some, but he's not an inside the numbers guy. Tyquan Thornton is not going to thrive in there. He's too little. Now, we can talk Tank Dell at another juncture, who's 166, also not who you would look at, but he's so friggin' fast and quick. Maybe he can be, an option route type of guy, the way James White was, whatever. They're going to be a good team, man. That's what's crazy. We had a long discussion, like I said, on early edition. Trenny had him 12th. I got him 6th in the conference and rising. All right, but there's something that has to be fixed before that, and that's the constant drumbeat of this offseason. That is the dysfunction. You didn't think you were going to get through a podcast without it. I'm going to do a quick aside here on the refutation and debunking that is alleged to have happened at the end of last week. It didn't happen. I've seen it. Well, they refuted that report by Florio that he was shocked. Multiple. Look, just because people wrote that, they can't find the team that the Patriots had trade talks with. does not mean that there were not conversations about the value of Mac Jones vis-a-vis trading. What can I get for him? Do you want him? What are we doing here? Do we believe in him? Again, a giant semantic conversation. Let's run some Mike Lombardi sound, who basically says the same thing in different terms. This is from the GM Shuffle podcast, friend of our pod, Mike Lombardi.
Every player is available, right? But not every player is being shopped. So the idea that he's shopping Mac that's against everything he would do. First of all, he's the most secretive person in the league. He's not going to tell you anything he's doing. Even some people in the organization don't know. But if somebody comes to him and says, I'll give you a 1 for Mac, okay, does that mean he's shopping him? No, that just means somebody asked the question.
So as you hear from Lombardi there, just because Bill didn't pick up the phone, it doesn't mean Florio's report is wrong in terms of trade conversations. Now, here's the interesting thing about semantics. And as Florio says, if Nick Caserio or some other team called him up because they're reading all the shit in the paper, that's not shopping. No, it's not.
Lombardi said that.
If you hang up, yes. If Bill hangs up or laughs the guy off the phone, that's not shopping. If Nick Caserio calls and said, hey, would you consider trading Mac? And Bill says, what are you talking about? What's our conversation here? And the conversation proceeds when someone says, I don't know, maybe a mix of picks, not a first. No, how can we get a first for the kid right now? Snot-nosed little bastard. What? I'm not saying I'd say that. Bill might. That being the case, this refutation and debunking of the idea that Bill Belichick would entertain or even did entertain conversations about trading Mac Jones because the word shopping, because he was not actively pushing his wares down Main Street, does not mean that if somebody knocked and had the secret knock and walked in and asked Bill about it, that doesn't mean trade conversations were not held, which is what Mike Lombardi's saying. This semantic gymnastics that we saw last week, in which people somehow needed to debunk the notion of shopping, ignores the greater picture that there were conversations, and I truly believe that, about whether or not Mac Jones should be moved. He ain't moving. He's staying right here. OTAs start, this week, Phil? So I said my piece. You have anything to add to that?
No, I think you're right. I do think that's what people envision when they hear shopping. They hear and see Bill Belichick sitting in his office making calls to Nick and saying, hey, what if I told you Mac was available? When the reality is, as you said, big picture, the story is Bill Belichick's not 1,000% sold on his starting quarterback. That's the story. So was he actively looking to trade him for a song? Was somebody gauging Mac's value if the Patriots were interested in trading him? We can kick that around for weeks as we have. It feels like. But the big picture story is this is not the honeymoon phase is clearly over between Bill Belichick and his starter. It doesn't mean the marriage can't be salvaged, but it doesn't feel like he's planning on a long future with the guy either.
I'm going to segue now to.
Am I wrong in saying that?
No, absolutely not. I just think, again, what it consists of is the semantic gymnastics about shopping or not shopping. And people continue to use the example of, hey, if Bill gets a call on Mac, that doesn't mean he's shopping him. No, but if the call lasts more than 10 seconds, that's a negotiation on the value of the player, which is, in effect, shopping.
Can I just mention, too, we do have two different instances in the recent past of Bill Belichick laughing off trade requests for quarterbacks. One is the Niners asking for Jimmy Garoppolo, being told he's not available, and then asking for Tom Brady and getting laughed off the phone. That was relayed to us by John Lynch. The other is the Adam Schefter report that the Patriots wouldn't be trading Jimmy Garoppolo for 4 first-round picks. That's how safe he was on the roster. That's how much the team believed in him. And of course, that ended up not being the case. He was moved. But both of those are instances of Bill Belichick saying, no, these guys are hands off. These guys are mine. Okay. And we're not getting that now with Mac Jones.
So again, given the incredible effort expended by people to debunk, refute, piss on the Florio report, again, forest for the goddamn trees, people try and see it. I got to talk about Eric Mangini's commentary to Colin Cowherd about Mac Jones because it was eye-widening in terms of how this continues to spin back on Mac, the decision made last year. And we keep hearing it, man. We keep hearing it. Albert keeps doing a bang-up job reporting what he's hearing in the building, which is out on Mac in terms of the way he behaved last year and the buy-in that he gave. That's why there's going to be competition in the building, continually in the building. There's doubt about whether or not Mac is the guy because of the way he behaved in that building. I mean, somebody's pretty pissed off, it seems to me, about the way Mac acted. Feeling as if somebody was given the high hat by some little kid who just got into the league. Okay, here's Mangini talking to Colin Cowherd. Listen to him having Bill's back. And I'm a big Mangini guy. Believe it or not.
Look, I'm a guy who understands grudges by Bill Belichick, but in this situation, I'm definitely siding more with him. And I've always had an issue with the way that Mac Jones has treated where he was lucky enough to get drafted. I thought it was a perfect situation for him. I thought having Josh McDaniels and that offensive staff that he had and the system that they had was incredibly fortunate for him and a really good fit. And it never felt like he appreciated it. I remember when Josh left and he was like, well, that's it. That's fine. I've had a bunch of offensive coordinators. I'll just deal with the next guy. And we also hear one small part of the story. Who knows what else has gone on in the building? And who knows, how deep the level of undercutting the guys that were there took place. Maybe Mac Jones was fighting the decision from the beginning, which made it a lot more difficult for the decision to be successful. So yeah, on a very superficial level, if you're looking at it as holding a grudge where he's at, and it's just that simple, then you do need to move on from it. But I'm guessing there's more to the story, and there's probably more than one incident that showed up over the course of that last season.
Meanwhile, here's Mike Lombardi, who kind of, shares. That's why I like having Mike on. He's got the same approach to it. Here's Mike on GM Shuffle again.
Did the Patriots mess up with their decision with the staffing? I think that's fairly obvious, and I think he's admitted that. Okay, so that's one. Did Mac Jones's behavior conducive to that of an ultimate leader? No, he's got to admit that too. So there's culpability on both sides. This isn't a one-sided let's favor the player route. Let's understand the player has to show sincere accountability for his behavior, his lack of maturity. I mean, the tackling on the some of that late tackling stuff on the field, that didn't endear himself with his teammates either. So he's going to have to cover that up. He's going to have to show that he's mature too. Like, the only way they're going to improve together is they both admit. Now, the Patriots have admitted they've changed staffs. They new line coach, new offense coordinator. Mac's got to have accountability.
Now, I will say this. When Mike Lombardi says, did the Patriots mess up with their decision with the staffing? That's fairly obvious, and I think Bill's admitted that. No, he didn't. He didn't. He did not. And it is not inherent in the decision to bring aboard Bill O'Brien that Bill said, yeah, I effed up. Especially when I know for a fact that the move to bring in Bill O'Brien was really urgent from ownership. Perhaps less so from coaching. Now, we've got a lot of people who say, well, it was a fait accompli. Everybody knew O'Brien was coming aboard. guarantee you, if things looked a little bit better with Patricia and Judge, they might have damn well continued with that track. Bill O'Brien didn't know for a fact he was coming to the New England Patriots. He didn't know for a fact where Patricia and or Joe Judge were headed. Those things were not established until Kraft and Belichick had a conversation and we saw a statement, and then Bill O'Brien was interviewed and hired. So the admission notion that Bill, was quick to make that move is, again, it's fallacy. It's presumed. Bill was pretty dug in. Be that as it may. Is Mac Jones a snot-nosed, Phil?
I'm kind of confused by the Mangini stuff. What is he? Can we dig into that a little bit? What is he talking about? Yeah. I've always had an issue with the way that Mac Jones has treated where he was lucky enough to get drafted. So he got drafted at 15 to the Patriots, and he proceeded to do what in that first year?
Worked his balls off, won the job.
In what way did he sort of thumb his nose at being drafted by the Patriots? I don't know. Maybe is there something there that we don't know about? That's why I'm confused. It sounds like he's talking about something there, but he thought it was the perfect situation. I thought having Josh McDaniels, having that offensive staff, first of all, yes, having Josh McDaniels was great for Mac Jones. Let's not act like the 2021 Patriots offense was the 2007 Patriots offense. That was, in terms of the pieces around him, was bottom 8 probably in the NFL. And then he's talking about, on a very superficial level, holding a grudge. That's what it looks like from Bill. But I'm guessing there's more to the story. Well, is he guessing? That's a weird thing to say on a nationally televised, very popular radio program. I'm just guessing there's more to it. Otherwise, Bill wouldn't be so pissed. Does he know something? Because if he knows something, he should say something, because it sounds very odd the way he's laying it out.
And I'm guessing the more to the story is the clandestine stuff that we've been seeing throughout the offseason. Showing up Matt Patricia, showing up Joe Judge, the story that came out in the Herald about how Patricia and Judge were players that Mac openly disrespected and were friggin' annoying at times, Judge in particular. All that stuff is going to rankle. And that fraternity of people who've been in the league are going to hear about this snot-nosed kid didn't appreciate where he came from. Huh? Did he? No. I mean, to me, there's a continued in the building murmuring about, we weren't that good at it, but this kid was a real dick. And it's got to go away. It's got to be expunged. It's got to be tied off. Sorry.
Is it worth mentioning that Matt Patricia and Eric Mangini probably worked together for a little while in New England?
Oh, 100%.
I would say, okay, I understand that, like the fraternity of coaches looking down upon Mac Jones, seeking out coaching when he wasn't getting coaching. But that's how I can tell you, I've spoken to coaches that maybe are in a different fraternity, but they look at the possibility of Mac Jones, maybe getting moved or being bandied about, his name being bandied about in trade talks, in part because he sought out some coaching when he and the team needed it. And the coaches that I've spoken to said, what are we getting after this kid for? Let's get this straight. He was in this situation, which clear to everyone was an adverse situation, wasn't getting what he needed, went and sought it out for the betterment of himself and thereby the team. And now he might be getting traded because of that. Like, again, forest for the trees.
I like what Phil says. What are we doing here? Everybody likes that, though.
People do like that for some reason.
Can we get that on a t-shirt?
I think that's one of the probably 10 or 15 things Edelman has trademarked in the last 3 years.
Yeah, but
isn't he a big, what are we doing?
Yeah, that's a Bill thing. Bill's always begins with an I mean. Yeah. I guess Bill also could trademark, and it was in Michael Hawley's book. Look at this. But that's not something you want to put on a t-shirt. All right, let's put a cork in this thing. Phil, see you Thursday. Phil's on Quick Slants with me this week. Mind around for some guests have struck out every single way. Watch Zay Flowers kick in at 5:38 and say, I'm ready to go. Doubt it. Phil, have a great Thursday. Bye, Skull Crusher.